I have a bunch of notes, so sorry if I'm looking down. This is just like a lot of details that I have to tell you, so this might be a little bit of a longer video, and I've only done one other review, so I'm still kind of learning how I want to do my reviews, how in depth I want to go, what's a spoiler, what's not a spoiler. This is like a really big book, and it's about history, so there's a lot of things I have to talk about. So Anna, like I said, I like my reviews to be in depth instead of just skimming the surface, like some people do, which is fine. I mean, everybody does it different, but I'm still trying to find how I want to do my videos, and so it's just going to take me time. So I'm sorry if this is going to be way too long or me talking too slow or anything like that. I apologize. I'm going to try to get better and better as my videos go along. So anyways, I'm doing it on The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory, and this is a very, very big book. Like I said, it has 700 pages, and the words are, you know, pretty small. I mean, they're like medium. They're not really teeny tiny. But I wanted to show you a comparison. This is the Game of Thrones, which I love. And this takes a long time to read. And this is 700 pages as well, around 700 pages. And you see how tiny the words are there? That's how tiny they are there, pretty much. I'm just trying to compare them, because what I'm saying is this book takes a long time to read. It's not as complex as Game of Thrones, but it's still got pretty tiny words, and you know, it's 700 pages. I ruined the front. I ruined my books because I carry them around with me, like, and then I don't take care of them enough, and so I picked this up from Barnes & Noble. I was going to Michigan, and I was going on vacation, and it's a 12-hour drive, and I just ride. My parents drive. So I wanted some books to take with me. So I bought 3 books. And so I bought this one, and the reason I bought this one is because I wanted to buy The White Queen and The Red Queen, because I've been watching The White Queen on Starz, and I loved it. And so I wanted to get The Red Queen and The White Queen, which is from the time period of Henry VI and the Cousins' War and all that fun stuff. And so the reason I got into that, first of all, is because I think George R.R. Martin said that he got his inspiration from Game of Thrones from this Cousins' War and how brutal it was, and the marriages and stuff like that for power, so that's really cool. I'm going on a rant. But anyways, so I got into it for that reason, and then I started watching The White Queen on Starz, and I loved it, so then I wanted to read the books. And so then I went to go look at the books, and then they weren't there, and then I needed something for the trip, so then I bought this because I've watched The Tudors, and I loved it, and I've never read anything by Mary or Anne Boleyn. So school made me hate history, but I don't want to be ignorant and naive. I want to be well-rounded, and I want to be more intelligent, so I wanted to start reading historical fiction, so then it could become a fun way to read history and to learn about history, and then afterwards it'll motivate me. If I want to learn more, I can always, you know, read another book or Google it or something like that to learn more about it, which is what I had to do with this. After I read this, I Googled and read a bunch about what actually happened and what didn't happen. I wanted to buy a historical fiction that was pretty much fact. Obviously you never know what they're going to say to people, what they were thinking in their head, what is their true motivations. You never know all that, so that's why it's fiction. But I wanted most that they know of to be fact, and she just messed with other stuff that is pretty much known as fact and just kind of messed around with it, which is fine. Like 3/4, it's pretty controversial on Amazon because 3/4 of the people loved the book and gave it like 4 or 5 stars because it's a great story. And they weren't reading it for the reason that I was reading it. But if you're reading it for the reason I was reading it, for facts, and or you're like a history major or a history buff and you like there to be historical facts in it, then this will irritate the crap out of you. It didn't irritate the crap out of me because I knew ahead of time that this wasn't fact. I mean, like 50% is probably fact and 50% isn't. So I just came into the, like, I bought this thinking, like I said, that I thought that a lot of it was fact and that, you know, the fiction parts were only the part that had to be fiction. But then I read the reviews right before I read it, after I bought it, and I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna hate this book. Because the whole reason I bought it was to learn about historical facts. I'm gonna hate this book. As a story, this is like a great story. She writes it really well. It's very entertaining, but like I said, if you're wanting it for the history facts, you're gonna probably cringe when she talks about some of the stuff that she talks about. I'm going to have a spoiler-free version and a spoiler-full version. Spoiler-full is if you've already read the book and you want to have a discussion, or if you already know the history. Obviously, if you know the whole history of this era, then it's not a surprise. It's not, you can read this or watch the spoilers, and it doesn't matter because you know what's going to happen. Or if you just want to know the spoilers to figure out if you want to read the book, which I do sometimes. I read or watch spoilers to help me figure out if I want to read the book, and then I forget about the spoilers before I read the book, because by the time I get it and read it, I've probably already forgotten the spoilers. So anyways, I'm going to do my spoiler-free version first. First of all, I want to talk about too, she doesn't do like regular chapters, like 1, 2, 3. She does the year. So it starts out at spring 1521 is when the book starts, and goes to May 1536. So quite a long time, like 15 years this book goes by, which is probably why it's so long. This follows Mary Boleyn's life, and so like 15 years of it, when she is basically, it follows her leaving the French court and going to the England court to assist the Queen of England, Queen Catherine, so she goes to court with her sister Anne, and then basically the story is about their life. I was afraid that because it's about Mary Boleyn that it wouldn't go into detail very much about what Anne does, because Anne is what fascinates me. Anne, I think, is so brilliant. They kind of fight over whether they think she was nice or evil or mean or conniving, but I think she was great. I mean, either way, I mean, this woman kept Henry VIII interested for 7 years. He like proposed to her right away, but they had to wait 7 years to get married because he had to divorce the Queen of England, Queen Catherine. So she had him wait 7 years without having sex or anything, and she still had him wrapped around her finger. That whole 7 years, that's like impossible to do these days, because you know the insta love is gone in like a year or two, and the lust is gone in a year or two, or they just get frustrated and they're like, you know, you're not worth the wait. Especially for a king. I mean, kings are like so impatient. They always have mistresses. They're always like messing around. So for her to keep him interested for 7 years and still want to marry her so bad is crazy. And then she was married to him for 3 years. But that's still 10 years. It's a long time. So I was afraid that they would only talk about Mary Boleyn and not about Anne Boleyn, but they talk through Mary Boleyn's perspective, but they still talk about Anne Boleyn. But the main people they talk about is Mary Boleyn and Anne Boleyn, a little bit of George, and then they mention her uncle and her dad a few times and her mom a few times. And then what really helps is if you know about history or you've watched Tudors. Tudors really helped me because they mention some people that like they'll only mention them like maybe 5 times throughout the whole book, or they'll have like one sentence about them and that's it. So it's kind of nice if you already knew who these people were, or watch the Tudors and be like, oh, okay, they're talking about this person. Like they talk about Cardinal Wolsey, like probably 5 times, but not in very great detail. And obviously you learn a lot about him in Tudors. And then they talk about Henry's sister, and then about Henry's best friend marrying Henry's sister, but they only say like one sentence, like, oh, you know, Henry's best friend married his sister for love, and we should marry for love too. And so, but if you didn't know that, it would be harder to make the connection, I guess. And they do that a bunch with a bunch of random people. They kind of mention them and then that's it. Or they might have one word in the conversation and that's it. Or they might be there but not any big deal. But they do talk about George's wife to Jane Parker a lot, and then some of the mistresses, but the main people that you see or hear about is pretty much Mary and Anne. But I do not like the way that she portrays Anne in this book. She portrays Anne to be such a bitch. And like I said, that's okay. Like some people think she's a bitch. Some people just think she was really manipulative. I think she was just really smart and maybe manipulative. But I think she was very ambitious, and she knew like all the sacrifices she was going to need to do to become the Queen of England. So I don't know. But even if they make her a bitch, they made her so one-dimensional. You never see another side of her. You never see compassion or love or anything like that. I mean, from what I've read, she was pretty loving. Like with her kid, when she had her daughter, she was really loving. She didn't want her daughter to be with a wet nurse. She wanted her daughter to be with her and really loved her. And in the book, she just could give a shit less about her kid. Or she should have compassion even if she's a bitchy person. She didn't. And the only other time she had any other emotion was fear. When she was fearful that Henry was going to move on or was going to find another mistress. So it was pretty much bitchiness and fear is like the only, so 2 dimensions versions that you've seen of her. And Mary is like the complete opposite. Mary was written as this perfect person who never did anything wrong. She always wants to be with her kids. She doesn't care about the court or being wealthy or high status. She doesn't care about any of that. And she never has a moment where she is bitchy or I don't know. With Mary being a one-dimensional person, she was always the same. Like they make her to be like solely good, like she wants to be with her children, but very selfish at the same time. Like she acts the same even when like Anne is going through all this stuff. Mary could care less about when she's pregnant, if she's gonna die from childbirth. Is her child going to be a boy, and is she going to get in trouble if her child isn't a boy? Mary could care less. All she wants to do is go be with her children, which, you know, is fine. That's what somebody would really do, but it wouldn't be just that one-dimensional. Basically, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, just because of the not historical facts of it, which is fine. I think I kind of have to think of it as it's a as-if or a what-if situation. If I had thought about that in the beginning and when I bought it, and I think if other people thought of the book as this way instead of buying it for the way that I did with historical facts, if you bought it in the way of what if, then I think you would benefit from it. And if you, like I said, if you just want to read a story about it, then it's great. This writer, Philippa Gregory, who also writes The White Queen and the Red Queen, she writes it as if the White Queen is a real witch. So it's kind of a what if. So I guess I have to keep it in perspective as that's how it is. She writes it as if, what if the rumors were true? So in this book, in real history, they accuse Anne of a lot of different things just because she is doing stuff that they don't want her to do. They don't want her to be the queen anymore. They want somebody else to be the queen. They want a mistress to be the queen, whatever their motives may be. They don't want Anne to be the queen anymore. So they start all these rumors and doubt and trying to cause doubt in Henry's mind. So she kind of writes it as what if that really happened. So I think if I had thought about it more like that, then I would have loved this book. So if you think about it in that perspective and you would just enjoy the story, other than the one-dimensional characters, I think it's a really good story. There's a book that has letters, official letters that Henry and Anne wrote to each other. And I think that would be so interesting. So I'm definitely going to buy that book and read the letters. I think it's pretty cheap and you can buy it on Kindle. So I really want that because I think that would be so interesting to see their conversations. But anyway, I think it's really fascinating when you're reading that part about Mary and Anne when Henry is courting them. I just think, like, it's not a romance, but it still feels like it kind of in that moment where you're like, oh, he's courting her, and how cute is that, and how is she manipulating him to love her and to be still interested in her. And so it's really kind of cool to see how they manipulate the situation, how they manipulate the king and manipulate the people around them to get what they want. So I think that's really cool. The other thing I forgot to mention is this is definitely an adult novel. It has sex in it, and I actually love that. Because, like I said before, I've said in other videos, is I like that they don't parade around the issue. Like, if they didn't include it in here, it wouldn't be real history to me. I mean, the reason he wanted to marry her so bad is because he wanted to have sex with her. I mean, and he had sex with mistresses all the time, and he, like, exchanged, you know, for them being his mistress, he gave him gold and gave him land and titles and whatever. And I think all that is interesting. And if you take that out, you're taking out history, and sex and relationships motivate people, and it motivates the king to do crazy stuff that he would never otherwise do, and vice versa to other people. So I think without that, that would be not as interesting, but I thought it was very interesting. And then learning like the certain kind of sex things or whatever that they had to do to keep him interested. But at the same time, they're not overly descriptive to where it's like an erotica or something like that, which I really like. Because I feel like with adult novels, it's a fine line. It's like YA and it's great, but it doesn't have any sex in it. And then you go to like adult and it just happens to be erotica. I feel like every time I'm like, oh, this looks like a good book, and I like keep reading and then find out it's an erotica. I'm like, are you freaking serious? I don't want to read an erotica. I want to read a story that might have sex in it. It doesn't have to be overly descriptive or anything, just so we know the motivation of the characters, and it's real. It's real emotion, it's real feelings, it's real things we would think about. So I don't know, but so I liked that this had it in it, but it wasn't overly descriptive and it wasn't like all the time. it was just in there, you know, but it wasn't in there for not a purpose. It had a purpose for being in there. Because I hate when like a story will put sex in there just to put sex in there, but there's no real purpose of it being in there. So I like that this had a purpose. Some people did comment on there that they hated that the sex was in it, like, you know, 1 out of 5 people that are like hate that there was any sex or anything in it. But like I said, I liked it and thought it was a good thing. But like, because of that, you know, you want to be mature enough to be able to read this. So if you're not watching the spoiler part of this review, thank you for watching. Sorry if it's way too detailed and way too long. Like I said, I just really didn't want to leave anything out, and I wanted to do a really good review for you guys. And it's about history, so there's so many comparisons that you have to do, and it's a really big book. So I'm really sorry if it was too long, and I'll try to do better next time. Thanks, bye. So, historical inaccuracies. So the first thing is that in this book, Mary is portrayed as such a goody-goody prude, and even when she is having an affair with Henry, she acts like it wasn't her choice and that her dad and uncle were pushing her to do it, and poor Mary did not want to do it, but she had no choice. And then she falls in love with Henry and is okay with it, but she still feels bad because she's married to another guy, and so she's basically like apologizing to her first husband and then apologizing to the Queen of England, because the Queen of England obviously knows that she's the mistress, and then but she's still doing it. But she's saying that she doesn't have a choice, but she really does have a choice, but she's saying that she doesn't because she doesn't want to let her family down, da 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 da. But that's not the issue. The issue is, in real history, obviously this stuff they don't know 100% sure, but it's just pretty much what most of the historians supposedly have agreed on. Like, I could be wrong in any of this, and I apologize right now if I'm wrong on anything that I'm saying, because I only know what I researched. But I mean, people make mistakes, and I'm not an expert in this area, so if I make a mistake or say something wrong, I'm really, really sorry. Just try to correct me below in a nice way, and but I'm going to try to tell you what I think I know. So they think that Anne and Mary probably made their way to Henry's bed on their own, and that the dad and the uncle didn't push them to do it. So this portrays Mary in a Virgin Mary way, and like good and innocent, when she in history probably did it herself. I wrote it down because it's kind of like a paragraph, so I wrote down my notes on the book, but it says, Mary Boleyn spent many years at the French court with a reputation of being promiscuous. The King of England called her my English mare because he rides her so often, and sent her home in disgrace because of it. So that's a really big difference than what they're talking about in the book, where she only had sex with her husband. Well, I don't think they necessarily say that, but they pretty much portray it that way. Oh, and then in the book, Mary Boleyn is banished from the court for marrying, I forgot the guy's name. I'll do an annotation. But she marries a guy and who is poor and stuff, and she marries for love. And then in the book, she ends up, like, I think she waits like a year or two, and then Anne invites her back to the court because she needs her help. She needs her support because she's afraid, like I said, and so she needs Mary's help. But supposedly in history, Mary was banished from court, and then she begged for many years to be allowed back, and she never came back. Not even when her siblings were in the tower. So not even when Anne and George were going through that stuff, and all the accusations of being, and then about to be killed, she didn't come back. So that's completely different than the book as well. And then, like I said, they also portray Anne to be such a bitch, but Anne saved hundreds of inquisitions and donated thousands of pounds to charity, the equivalent of millions today. So she donated a lot, and then she saved like Christians and Protestants from being from burning to the post. But anyway, they portray her to be like she wouldn't do any of that stuff in the book. So I think the biggest historical inaccuracy, and what angered the most people who know about history, and me as well, is that she wrote it as if Anne had slept with her brother and had committed adultery. I think they accused like 4 men and 4 different guys, and then her brother, like that she had sex with all of them, that she committed adultery and had sex with her brother and then had sex with these 4 guys. And so I think he killed all 5 of them and Anne in the end, which is kind of depressing. So basically the rumor was she was a witch, that she committed adultery to all these different men, and then she committed adultery to her brother, the ultimate sin of incest. And so I think pretty much most historians agree that this did not happen at all, and in fact, I don't think she would be that stupid. She was very calculated and smart and manipulative, and she was having, like, she had one girl and then miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And back in the day, women were blamed for miscarriages and not being able to produce a male heir. So they kind of thought, you must be a witch, you must be committing adultery, you must be sinning, you must be doing something to cause this, for God to do this to you. So with all this going on with her, she wouldn't be committing adultery, I don't think anyway, because she's not that dumb. And I think she knows how much power Henry has and how he would find out. So I don't think, even if she had produced a male heir, I don't think she would have done that. But definitely because she didn't, and she knew that King Henry had already had another mistress and was thinking of, you know, having another queen and maybe divorcing her. So I don't think she's that stupid, but I do think that most historians agree that she definitely did not do that. And so what angered me and what angered a lot of people is that in the book she wrote it as if she did have sex with her brother, and all kinds of just rumors and stuff about Anne. So I think that's why people are getting so angry about this. But I just didn't want to mention, you know, Anne dying, or, you know, all the stuff that's going on in the spoiler-free version. So I don't think anybody really seriously believes that Anne committed these things. So that's why I'm thinking maybe she purposely did it as a what-if scenario, or maybe she truly believes all these things actually happened. I'm not really sure, because I'm sure there's a lot more of, like, historical inaccuracies in this book that I didn't catch, but that's kind of like some of the main ones that I noticed and a lot of people got mad about. I'm still glad I read it. Like I said, if I had read the reviews, I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't have bought the book, but I already bought the book before I read the reviews, and I'm kind of glad I read it. It was still a good read, but I do want to read other books about Anne Boleyn and Mary Boleyn that are accurate, and different fiction and stories, and maybe a biography. I mean, who knows? I think Anne Boleyn's story is really, really interesting. So I've written like 3 or 4 pages of notes, and I just kind of wanted to cover everything. I tried to talk as fast as I could, which is why I keep smacking my lips, because they're so dry, and I keep trying to drink water and talk really fast. And so I'm really sorry if that irritated you too, and I'm so sorry that this video is so long. If you're still watching me after this long ass video, then bravo. So, but thank you for watching and supporting me. Thanks. Bye.